Species.
It's often said that we live in a golden age of television, but I don't think enough focus is given to the fact that we're also living in the golden age of exotic veterinarian shows.
All right, welcome to Origin of Species. My name is Scott. I'm here with my friend Steve, and I guess you're right about that. We've got a lot of specialty programming out there. So you got some specific ones you're talking about? Or?
So I was recently on Disney Plus in their National Geographic section, and I came across a show called Dr. T, Lone Star Vet. Dr. Lauren Thielen is the Dr. T of the show. Apparently she spun off from another show called Dr. K, but I haven't got a chance to look at that yet. Mm-hmm. And just spoiler alert, it's not Dwight Gooden.
Can you imagine if it was Dwight Gooden, Dr. K?
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
That would be maybe some of the best television that's ever, and maybe that's the next, what's beyond a golden age.
Right.
Extra gold, bonus gold, platinum age.
Your anesthesiologist is Daryl Strawberry. I mean, that'd be bad.
Yeah, you wouldn't wake back up from that. So Dr. T, Lauren Thielen, is a emergency vet in Texas. So she gets to see kind of family, people own pets and things like that. But Dr. T was a gateway drug to an even better show, Dr. Oakley, Yukon Vet, which instantly, the stakes are higher because we're in the Yukon.
Right. Wait a minute. Yukon, Alaska. That's my my getaway.
That's your getaway place.
And by the way, this, just to be clear, this isn't Charles Oakley of the New York Knicks that we're talking about. Okay.
But that would be wonderful to imagine that when you're a professional athlete in New York and things, your time is done, you'd make the logical next step into exotic animal veterinarian.
That's right. The Lone Star, Yukon. All right. Yeah. So tell me more about the Yukon. I like this.
Dr. Oakley, Yukon Vet, seduced me with an episode entitled Poking the Bear. That in the description, you see that she's going to have to examine and relocate 2 black bears. And then in the preview, or the beginning, maybe the credits, you see that she's going to have to anesthetize these bears by using a blow dart.
Oh, nice.
And this was...
Hey, that was my preferred weapon also in Alaska. I don't know if you recall.
I did not.
I said I was going to go with the blow dart. So
maybe
I might be the demo for this show too.
I thought this show was made to seduce me, but it sounds like
it depends on. So what all happens with the bear? I think blow dart to the bear. I can see you getting fired up for that.
Oh, was I fired up? So normally we watch National Geographic kind of in a casual right before you go to bed. My wife actually literally had to talk me down as I got into a power squat on the bed and was starting to raise my voice to wake Mindy the dog and my daughter at the same time because I was getting pretty pumped watching this happen. I
have to say, Steve, you are probably the most engaged watcher of TV of anyone I've ever met.
Well, little bit. It goes pretty much from 0 to 100. I'm either half asleep playing Scrabble on my phone watching something, or it's a bear getting hit with a blow dart, and I'm ready to go up to Alaska to meet Dr. Oakley, Yukon Vet.
Well, see, I can picture this because I've had 2 instances of seeing you get fired up. One was just watching football with you, Virginia Tech games, and you screaming, "Kick him!" to the defense, and which I thought was really funny.
I basically advocate things that would have them penalized and probably thrown out of college football permanently.
That's probably the tamest thing I can say. The other one was I came to the door to, I think, drop something off for you, and your wife answered the door, and I said, "Hey, is Steve there?" And then all of a sudden I just heard these noises, and she's like, "He's watching Cops." And you're upstairs. You weren't yelling, "Kick him," but I could hear you yelling.
I found Cops for several years was a very good transition. That once the college games were done, just kind of it was a good way to kind of. It's still very competitive, and a lot of I could yell "Kick them," and it actually would happen. Maybe
Cops getting the bad guys,
and more accepted.
So I can definitely see you, like you said, in your power stance, rooting for Dr. K.
Yeah. But to kind of get back to, Dr. Oakley, Yukon Vet is a little bit, it's family friendly, but it's a little intense. But Dr. T, Lone Star Vet, is a little bit more family friendly.
Right.
But what I enjoyed about that was watching that and seeing an alternative version of it that maybe on a week where Dr. T was out of town, and then instead Dr. Steve would be there. And if someone would come in crying about their monitor lizard that they had dropped a couch on, a person with a man bun, and this is, I'm fairly certain, all real, Dr. T was there to kind of help them and make them feel better. Dr. Steve would have his shovel with him, which, serves multiple purposes of, I can address this problem with your pet pretty quickly here. And then, also we dispose of the animal too. But then Dr. Steve's there for kind of a different demographic. Maybe there's like a Disney After Dark or something.
I don't even know. I'm trying to think of how to even respond to that because I don't think that would fly.
If you show up with a man bun in a
you said a monitor lizard?
I believe that's what it was.
What is a monitor? I'm learning all sorts. First of all, I learned about patisserie chef last week because, as you mentioned, we are getting very. There's a whole smorgasbord of baking shows and now apparently exotic animal shows. Which, by the way, patisserie, real word. I did have to.
Yeah.
I checked that out because, no offense, I wanted to make sure it was an actual word before a little QA action there.
And actually see if I actually pronounced it correctly, which is that's the word I decided to focus in on. Apparently, was the word patisserie.
Well, you did nail it, and it's a pastry chef. It's a French word. Well, I think you nailed it until we get some mail.
If not, Alan from Sydney's waiting to point out how we've murdered any other words.
Yeah. So anyway, but I've learned about a monitor lizard.
Yeah.
Is that like a what do they call them? Emotional support lizard or something?
Well, the guy with the man bun needed one after he dropped a couch on its head, apparently, and was feeling pretty bad about it. But
that's his own fault. What?
Yeah, but see, that's what Dr. S is there for. It's just, my first question would be, really?
So
why? And then I would say, I can take care of this for you, and you don't need to worry about it anymore.
All right. Well, this took a turn for the dark. So let's do some idioms. You got something to cheer us up?
You're right. This kind of took a dark end. So let's go ahead and go into today's idioms.
Please.
Which are plague-inspired idioms, just to kind of keep the light tone going.
Plague-inspired.
Plague-inspired. So
you know we've got a little outbreak happening.
I am. I'm aware of the coronavirus going on right now, and I'm also aware of a book I was reading at the same time, Fever by Mary Beth Keane.
You give me fever.
Kind of.
Sorry.
Well, actually, that could be the title character's theme song, as it's a book about Typhoid Mary. Oh. So I felt like at this point I was pretty much destined to do something. So again, the coronavirus is something that's happening. It's I don't want to act like I'm making light of a disease that's taken lives and probably will take more lives. But the way I look at it is, if you can't, it is what it is. We live in, as we're going to talk about some history of viruses and plagues. It's something that happens, cycles through history every now and then. So in a very odd way, and I'm serious, I'm kind of excited by it. Like, it's going to happen. It's happening right now. Let's just live in the moment and,
Well, the other thing is, hopefully some sort of innovation will come out of it, right? Yeah. I think that's the other big hope. So
yeah. So just some quick coronavirus facts to get us started here. According to the New York Times, which, by the way, we kind of ping the New York Times every now and then for being a little bit too, wedded to their ideology, that no matter what happens, we're going to hear about
their narrative.
Yeah, the narrative is going to come no matter what. But their science coverage for the outbreak's been actually pretty spot on and informative. So, according to the New York Times, coronavirus is a novel respiratory virus that originated in Wuhan, China.
That's fun to say. Wuhan.
Yeah, Wuhan. And I'm sure I've said it correctly.
Oh, please, Chinese listeners, send in your emails.
Well,
emails.
Let me see how that...
Send in your electronic mails.
So, coronavirus is named for the spikes that protrude from its surface, resembling a crown or the sun's corona. So nothing to do with the beer. But maybe now we know why corona is called corona. So we've already learned something.
Bonus etymology.
Thank you, coronavirus. So at this time, it's kind of hard to see how lethal it is. Actually, another good New York Times article speculated that one of the good and bad things about it is that this time it's so mild, and it's good that it's not taking a lot of people out, but it's bad that with it being mild, it can be confused for other things.
Right. You're not gonna, if you're bleeding out of your eyes or something, you're gonna go to the doctor.
Yeah, which is, I believe, is Ebola.
Speaking of outbreak.
Yeah. So, keeping with our plague and virus theme, I thought I'd
a sentence you never thought you'd say.
and I'm sure everyone's going, man, I'm really glad I downloaded this today.
Right.
I should be watching Dr. Oakley, Yukon Vet.
If you're feeling down, please pause this and go walk outside, eat a banana or something.
And by the way, the episode that I was speaking of earlier is from season 4, episode 2, Poking the Bear. And I would advise that you go to Disney Plus first before you Google Poking the Bear. Learn from experience. You might not want to do that. So
then go watch Grizzly Man and have a laugh.
Yeah, kick your Friday night off right. So the first phrase we're going to look at is "Ring Around the Rosie." So pretty famous nursery rhyme that I think everybody knows or has heard at some point. And once I saw this, I was pretty sure the folk etymology of it.
It's like the dark origins.
Yeah. The folk etymology I've always heard with is it came from the Black Death or the Black Plague, and that made sense to me. But did some research, and let's talk about that and find out. So going to our friends at Phrase Finder, it's a nursery rhyme. There's a couple different versions of it. Ring around a rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down.
Right, and you hold hands and you go in the circle, and then everybody falls down at the end.
So looking at what Phrase Finder says, they disagree that it traces back to the Black Plague, mainly because the Black Plague occurred in the 1340s, and it didn't show up in writing till about 500 years later. But the good thing about that is it gives us a chance to learn a little bit more about the Black Plague, or the Black Death. So we're gonna learn some things today. The Black Death of the 14th century is actually part of something that is called the Second Plague Pandemic.
That sounds horrible.
It sounds awful, and it was. And it's a period that lasted started in the 1400s, concluded with the Great Plague of London in the year 1665. So let's talk about those. And let's keep in mind also, we're talking about the Second Plague Pandemic.
Right.
So the Black Death or the Black Plague emanates from a bacteria called Yersinia pestis. It is transported to humans via fleas who often attach themselves to rodents. You think of plagues, you think of rodents. It takes 3 main forms: pneumonic, septismic, and bubonic. So it sounds like the worst version of Alvin and the Chipmunks, like if they had like a rival group that they battled with.
Bubonic!
Yeah, so all 3 forms kind of work together to take out a lot of people.
Yeah.
But bubonic is the one that's a little bit more focused on during the Black Death.
And it's really bad, too, because it's the fleas get on the stinking rats, and then the rats defecate, and that gets everywhere. I mean, it sounds a lot like Los Angeles.
They eat grain. We're going to learn also a very simple way to battle a lot of these diseases. Probably wasn't taken care of or wasn't done back then. And I'm going to save that big spoiler for the end.
Can't wait.
So going back to the Black Death, this is from livescience.com. What was the Black Death? An article they had. So it was bubonic plague caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis. In the book, The Black Death, 1346 to 1353. The Complete History, and that sounds like a great summer read there.
Sure.
Author Ole Jorgen Benedictau estimates that 50 to 60% of the population of Europe died during the Black Death. Most of the time, it's estimated that a third of Europeans lost themselves to the disease, but it was higher, more than 50%. And they also note in this article that it's less well known that the plague continued to strike Europe, the Middle East, and beyond for the next 400 years, returning every 10 to 20 years, coming back.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like hell on earth, man.
And it was. So again, this was part of the second pandemic that originated in or near China, and it was speculated to be spread by what was called the Silk Road, which is the trade route, and also shipments from Asia. So that is the Black Death that we also that we generally think of the plague. That's a Black Death.
So the plague is the Black Death. Neither of these things have to do with Ring Around the Rosie, but we don't think. But
we're just having some fun. We're just talking plagues, and then again, in a weird way,
talking plagues.
I'm excited because it's kind of I've learned some interesting things I'm going to share with you here soon.
Okay.
So mentioned that this all occurs during the second pandemic, which concludes with the Great Plague of London in the years 1665 to 1666. It's the last major epidemic of bubonic plague to occur in Europe. During that time, a quarter of London's population was killed in 18 months.
Good gracious.
Again, our friend Yersinia pestis was back. Even though it was a much smaller scale than the Black Death, it was pretty prominent because it was
25%.
Last major outbreak, and also was in England. So that was the end of the second pandemic. So the third plague pandemic began in 1855 in China and is actually considered active until 1960.
Really?
Yeah, so was not aware of that. This one affected mostly different parts of Asia, China, India. So this continued until 1960, when it was decided that it had ended when deaths were down to 200 a year, which is still pretty crazy that bubonic plague was taking out that many people.
So we're at 120 years or something.
So I mentioned the second plague pandemic with the Black Death and the Great Plague of London.
You started with the second.
The third plague pandemic. Both of these were originated in China.
Right.
So let's go back to the first pandemic. If you got a trilogy, you got to close it out.
Absolutely.
So the first plague pandemic began with the plague of Justinian in the year 541 AD. It was a pandemic that affected the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, and Constantinople, along with other port cities in the Mediterranean. So at the time, it was believed that the outbreak in Constantinople had been by rats that arrived from Egypt. So for many years, it was thought that everything went back to Africa for this one. However, in the last few years, some discoveries have been made that trace the actual origin to China.
I was about to say, if you say China.
So I will say China. So a resource we haven't used that much is phys.org. It is a science website, an article from Northern Arizona University entitled Modern Lab Reaches Across the Ages to Resolve Plague DNA Debate from 2013. In short, a German grave site produced some DNA through a tooth that allowed people to analyze the material there, genotype it, and trace it back to China.
Wow.
So
what a time to be alive.
It is. Well, as history cycles itself through, we see that.
I like that Germany just sort of like gets in on this. Like,
there's a plague. We got to be here somewhere.
Yeah.
So first plague pandemic, China. Second plague pandemic, China. Third plague pandemic, China. Coronavirus.
So we shouldn't worry about the coronavirus.
Yeah, Wuhan.
Where's it from?
Yeah.
It's from Mexico. Coronas.
So, no. Yeah, it would be. That could be. And I actually read something today that Corona's, like,
I read
purchases
that too.
are dropping.
Oh, yeah.
I feel bad for them, but
they'll be all right.
Yeah, they'll be okay.
I saw the same thing. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
Well, but I saw an ad they did. Now, this could have been faked, but it was like these bottles. I don't think this was a meme. It said, like, coming ashore soon. And it was like, Coronas.
Bad time.
It's probably fake now that I say it out loud.
But maybe I feel bad if it was like, you know what, we're finally going to crack that Chinese market. And here's an ad.
Yeah.
That could be tough. Again, you gotta look at the bright side of things. So, little plague background for anyone who's still here. So when did this show up in print? So going back to Phrase Finder, they don't think that it goes back to the plague because it took so long to end up in print. The first appearance in print in the USA was included in a novel called The Old Homestead in 1855. Afterwards, we see it printed in Mother Goose, which wasn't published until 1881.
Wow.
And around that time, too, we see a book called Games and Songs of the American Children, 1884.
The reason it wasn't in print is because everybody was dying.
Yeah, it could be. And it took them that long to make sure because kids weren't going to be around.
Exactly.
So they had to do that. So that is stated by the author, William Wells Newell, who wrote the Games and Songs of the American Children in 1884, but also doesn't document anything to go with that.
Right. It's just, it reminds me of Sleep Tight, Don't Let the Bed Bugs Bite, which was another, it may have been that same book where they're chronicling children's rhymes and things like that, but they don't, all you know is, hey, this was around enough that it got into a book, but we don't know exactly why.
So what Phrase Finder goes with, which I think actually makes sense, is it's just, what's the Occam's razor? The simplest explanation probably is the correct one. It's a nursery rhyme. The words are nonsense. It's a catchy tune. And that's why there's also different versions of it. It's not like scripture that everyone says is, there's different versions, especially of the ashes part. It's catchy. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So this really is the same as sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. You want to have these dark origins because it's more fun. But what you did there, Steve, was masterful because we got real depressed talking about all these plagues. But then the good news is, kids haven't been singing a song about, Typhoid Mary or people dying of Around the Rosie. Yeah,
which is also, you mentioned Typhoid Mary again, which is also, that's something I've been working on now of like, I think we need a Typhoid Mary nursery rhyme book. So maybe that's part of it in this dark time we can do that.
Yeah, we can. I'll tell you, this reminds me of, I went to GalaxyCon here in Richmond, which was fun. And you got to see a lot of people in masks and things, but I had this sort of Mask of the Red Death moment, which was there were a lot of people. So the Edgar Allan Poe short story where there's it's like a party with upper class people and there's a guy with a mask walking around and people are all dying of the plague. They thought they were safe from it, but they're all start dying off one by one. And I'm looking around at like these little kids that are wearing these masks. They look like SARS masks. You know what I mean? They look like the mask. But I'm like, I think that's part of their costume. But it's like, I hope nobody here is sick. And then all of a sudden you realize you're with like a huge group of people that also like the main thing, they eat Doritos and Code Red Mountain Dew. And I mean, I'm hoping they all wash their hands, but they've got masks on. Yeah. And it was I had a moment of, it could be one of those situations people just start dropping out.
Well, going back to one of the things I've learned from the New York Times coverage of the coronavirus is that that masks are basically good if you have something. If you're trying to prevent yourself from getting something, mask really, unless you're changing masks every time you're going in and out.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So.
Well, and then I have a big problem with this because Uncle Sam's going to make me shave my beard, apparently. I had people reveling in that at work. Have you heard this?
I did see that. The best way to get a mask, well, you just tell them that it doesn't, if you see me wearing a mask, it means I have it.
That's right.
So you got bigger problems than my beard.
Well, I'm telling them that the beard protects me, so screw you guys, because it's like a layer of it's like a filter for my face, so has a lot of different,
or a bacteria catcher, depending on which way you want to look at it. Kind of glass half full.
You say that like it's a bad thing, but
beard half empty, beard half full. Way to look at it.
I'm not shaving my beard. Next.
All right.
Species.
This is Steve from Origin of Species. I'm very excited to tell you about my first solo podcast for the Species Network. Coming this spring, inspired by my love of nature, a podcast that provides a critical examination of animals and how they affect the world around us. Animals That Suck. In each episode of Animals That Suck, a special guest and I will discuss awesome animals like cats, possums, and Mindy the dog. Also, we will examine animals that are clearly terrible, like bears, raccoons, alligators, and probably your dog if you call it a fur baby. Animals That Suck will debut on March 31st as a special episode of Origin of Species. Don't miss out. Subscribe to Origin of Species today at your favorite podcast provider. See you on March 31st for Animals That Suck.
Species.
All right, so the next one I wanted to do is pretty much really it makes sense when you think about having plagues and spreading disease is bless you or God bless you.
God bless you, yeah.
So this is one that I never asked if you say ring around the Rosie because I imagine you don't spend too much time.
Been a while.
If I see you with a bunch of kids singing that, it's probably going to be there's going to be other questions I'm going to have.
Speaking of that, like I don't know if it's just being jaded or being whatever it is, because when you talked about the guy that like wrote the book of all the children's songs, I'm like, what was his story?
Yeah.
Like that, of all the things, that's what you chose to write.
Was he a magician for children's parties?
Exactly. Do you
like
DJ kids' pool parties? Wait a minute. Yeah. No, but he's like, well, so this is what the 6-year-olds are saying. Okay. But anyway, so yeah, no, I don't do that now. As far as bless you, like I said it multiple times today. I did try to go on a Gesundheit kick for a while and thought it was too forced, like something.
Yeah,
it's like
and also you don't want to, any Germans to think you're feeling a little too German.
That's a good point.
Or other people who have been run out by them at some point.
Now, do you have let me ask you, have you established a bless you count, like a moratorium, like after 2 in a day, I'm not telling you bless you anymore? Do you announce that? Do you just...
I generally will do 2. And if I'm comfortable with the person, by the 3rd time, I ask them what their problem is. And I just get confrontation with what is wrong with you?
Right.
Why are you still here? Get out. I don't want the coronavirus.
Right. I usually opt for the, you're out of your bless yous for today. I used to do that, but then I realized how unfunny it was.
Yeah.
I just politely stopped saying bless you.
Yeah.
But I don't say God bless you generally. I just say bless you.
I feel like it's a little bit forced. It's kind of like when you sometimes you wish people a Merry Christmas.
It's exactly that.
So I just do the bless you.
Yeah.
So you get to a good use of it, I think. So I do use it. And it's more manners. It just seems to be a general good manners thing. If someone sneezes, you say bless you.
But my daughter's asked me before, why do we say bless you when you sneeze? And people are coughing, you don't say anything, you just look at them funny.
Yeah, because you don't want to breathe in their filth. At least with a sneeze, there's a chance it's allergies or something, or a cat.
That's true, but have you seen the slow motion of somebody sneezing out?
Oh, it's disgusting.
It's disgusting.
It's almost as good as watching a slow motion shot of a blow dart going into a bear and then knocking them out. So our friends at Phrases UK note this as being something that there's really not a very definitive answer, and discusses some of the folk etymology that people generally think this goes back to the plague.
Right.
Which would make sense that I think, as we kind of talk about how Ring Around the Rosie couldn't be back to the plague because it was so long ago. But it kind of makes sense. It's one of those folk etymologies that kind of puts everything together. But even though I seem to go back to Phrase Finder or Phrases UK a whole lot, mainly because they're awesome and also because I'm lazy, I do explore outside. So one of the things I found was very interesting was something that came from 2 very different news sources that I'll share with you at the end what those sources were. But whenever these guys agree on something, I thought it was pretty good. So I'm going to quote from one of the articles. Professor W. David Myers, a professor of history at Fordham University, and he points back to a pope, Pope Gregory the Great, that he believed a sneeze was an early warning of a sickness, so he commanded Christians to respond to that sneeze with a blessing. Phrase Finder also notes that this is an etymology that's out there. They don't find anything written down, and with the Catholic Church especially, back in the day, if something was going to happen, it was going to be written down.
Right.
The Pope's going to say it. It's not going to go through word of mouth.
No.
So the thing that I found very interesting about this is New York Times and Fox News both promoted this idea of that, which I think that was just fun.
That is fun.
Just to say that together. That will probably be a Fox News alert with that. But also, too, the Pope that I mentioned, Pope Gregory, he was Pope in the year 590, which was just about the time.
That's the first one, right?
Of the first outbreak of plague.
See, I'm taking notes over here.
So again, that plague is just the gift that keeps on giving. Whether it's diseases or China or idioms and phrases.
And so that's why, even though, as you pointed out, and I totally agree with, that this would have been somehow, because all these ones with Catholic Church, they do have, they have note of it. But we think it's because, hey, it was around that time frame, this guy started saying it, it had to do with that, had to do with that.
So since we're on Bless You, it made me think of something a little bit lighter. So we're going to talk about one of my favorite Southern phrases, bless your heart. We've talked about bless you.
Yes.
We'll talk a little bit about bless your heart here.
The condescending bless your heart.
I like to think that it is a multi-tooled weapon that you can use very different ways.
Well, because my grandmother used to say it, and I think she really meant it. Like, I don't think she was being mean about it.
Right.
She'd say, oh, bless your heart. And she'd be like, I said something sweet or I did something and it was meant in a good way. But I feel like over the years it's changed, right?
Yeah. So I think that's a good way to put it. So bless your heart is one that it can be used in multiple different ways. It can be used as a sincere, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm sorry you're going through that. Bless your heart.
Right.
And it also can be used, especially here in the South, as a rapier to cut you when you've done something stupid.
Yes.
According to an article, Why Bless Your Heart is the Most Savage Insult in the Country by a magazine called mailmagazine.com.
You say Mail Magazine?
Mel Magazine.
Oh, okay.
And their subtitle is, "As a Southerner, I'll tell you this, it's the nicest way that you'll ever be called an idiot." It goes back to the idea of, they define as nice meanness too.
Yeah.
So some examples of that I was able to find of how "bless your heart" has been used. It's something that can go both ways. A very prominent example recently, in the last few years, was Donald Trump had said something towards South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, to which she responded to it with a "bless your heart." And that was definitely in the kind of sassier, cutting way to say that.
Well, and it's always great for like a political person to use something that's kind of from where they're from, kind of the all hat, no cattle thing with whatever her name was.
Governor Ann Richards of Texas.
That's it, exactly. So it's the same. I feel like you get extra points because you're getting your little authenticity from where you're from, and it's a good zinger.
It's also one that I think especially after Trump was zinged with it, that people thought it's a weapon they can use. And you have to be a skilled practitioner to be able to use that.
Oh yeah, people can't just start saying it. You do have to be Southern or something. I don't know. But
so a couple examples of other ways it can be used as an insult comes from a book by Celia Rodenbach, whose book "Bless Your Heart, Tramp," and Other Southern Endearments from 2006 offers this definition. Someone once noted that a Southerner can get away with the most awful insult as long as prefaced with the words "bless her heart" or "bless his heart." As in, "Bless her heart, she's so buck-toothed, she can eat an apple through a picket fence." So from here, I wanted to find what the origin of where "bless your heart" was first used. It's something that's pretty common, but what was the first use of it? So I did some research. I actually used, Scott, your new hero, Anatoly Lieberman.
Nice.
And wasn't able to find a definitive first use of it, or was I? So in actually doing some research with on his website, I came across a photo. It was actually a cartoon from the year 1816 that the subtitle is, "Why bless my heart, Johnny, you're welcome. How's your mother?" Showing Uncle Sam greeting a young man. Did some additional research on that. And I think I will claim this is the earliest use of this phrase that I can find in print. And until anyone else can top me on that, I'm going to stick that. I might actually go in court tonight and do that. So
you better check Barry Popek's website first.
You mean Barry Popek's website?
I said what I said.
So the use of "bless my heart," and then, again, in a nice way, it's Uncle Sam talking to someone, comes back.
Even when he says, "How's your mother?" Because that's got some bad, if Mark Wahlberg said, you remember that Saturday Night Live bit? He just goes, "How's your mother?" Yeah, or "Say hello to your mother." Say hello to your mother for me. There you go. Thank you.
If you're comparing Uncle Sam to Marky Mark of the Funky Bunch, we need to talk off.
Name a more American male than.
So I will. The painter of the cartoon in question, Archibald McNeil Willard, an American painter from Ohio, was an artist who often worked in patriotic paintings, including his most famous work, "The Spirit of 76," which you would recognize if you saw.
I do know that
the
one.
two drummers and a guy playing a recorder or a flute. So he is also responsible for that cartoon with Uncle Sam. "Why bless my heart, Johnny, you're welcome. How's your mother?" Which now I'm going to see is dirty because of you.
Well, and I will say, it takes a big man to admit when he's wrong, but this guy's way more American than Marky Mark. So.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. You are.
No, it's not even close. And he's probably way more American than most people you could have brought up. But.
So bless you. Not sure exactly where that originated from. I think it's around just for good manners. Yeah. And Fox News and New York Times combined, I think it's from a pope from the first plague pandemic. Right. So if those two get together, ebony and ivory style, I'm going to go with that. "Bless your heart" is a great Southern comment. I think most of the time you hear it used, it is in the right way. It's used nicely. However, when it needs to be turned into a weapon, it takes a skill to do that I don't have. And I don't advise you try to do it.
I don't know. Can a man do it?
That's another good. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
And even if you do it right, it's almost kind of like you gain the world but lose your soul. Like
Yeah.
if whatever situation you're in that you're a man that pulls off a bless your heart, you're kind of undoing yourself. I
think if I'm being honest, I think a gay man could do it.
Yeah.
I mean, really, because
they can do anything.
Well, of course.
Oh, thank you.
But they can do that better than. I don't think it's a straight
hashtag
guy.
virtue signal.
All right, so I think you're good on bless you.
I feel like I've said everything.
I feel like Steve, you put in some work on this episode, man. We went through 3 plagues and bless your heart and ring around the road. Man, I mean, it's been a lot. So
yeah,
and we're gonna move on to new slang. All right, so as you were doing the bless your heart thing, I was trying to think, would this apply? Because I'm always trying to make a transition when there's really not one there. But the one we're going to do tonight is Karen.
Karen.
The name Karen.
The name Karen.
So, I mean, let me just first ask you, when I say the slang Karen, does that mean anything to you?
So I've seen that pop up during my unfortunate travels on social media.
Yeah.
And from what I've understood, it means a woman who's complaining about something or making sassy comments. And almost when I hear that too, I hear Ray Liotta and Goodfellas
Yes.
yelling at his wife, Karen, come on, Karen.
Karen? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good call on that. That's a good Karen. Well, and there's something about her, which is she's a middle-aged white woman. So Karen is sort of the one that's I guess.
Does she want to talk to the manager about what
Karen
happened
does
to her
want to
food?
talk to the manager. So let's talk about Karen. So Karen is one name of many that's used to make fun of a certain demographic. So I had seen it on some memes and thought it was pretty funny, because like you said, it's got the sort of the haircut, the whole deal, which we'll get into a little bit, but I feel like at first you heard Becky, or you heard a lot of, it could be Susan, it could just be any generic middle-aged white woman name, but really Karen has stuck out. I read on an article in Vox.com, so it's good.
Yeah.
I'd use that. But it's actually very thorough, and I'm just going to kind of stick to this one because I saw all sorts of stuff talking about what is this Karen slang? Why is it happening? Where did it come from? So the Vox.com article was written by Aja Romano in November of 2019, so fairly recent. It's called Karen, the anti-vaxxer soccer mom with Speak to the Manager hair. Explained. So you brought up the Speak to the Manager thing. I saw all these other attributes that were what's happened now is anything that frankly younger people mostly, but even also people in our age or Generation X don't like about a woman is now getting lumped into Karen.
Yeah, it's kind of like a female okay boomer.
I was going to bring that up exactly right. It's an offshoot, and it's not an offshoot, but it's in that family.
Yeah.
And like we talked about before, Becky with the good hair. I don't know if you heard that one. That one's I think came from Beyonce.
Yeah, and I've heard Susan,
right. But let's talk about where this came from real quick. And again, not going to dive too deep into it. But first is the thing I hadn't heard before was anti-vaxxer. That came up everywhere. I was like, oh, I didn't know that was part of it. So the first thing I think about is the manager haircut, the talk to the manager haircut, which honestly is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Kate Gosselin from John and Kate Plus 8 is, so have you ever had to, I couldn't remember her name.
Yeah.
And so sometimes things are so easy to Google and sometimes they're not. I typed in TLC show lots of kids. And of course there's a million of those. And I'm like,
just like
blonde.
The number of kids they had.
It really is. And she didn't come up. And I'm like, what in the, so I'm like, mom and Asian dad, lots of kids, Karen, and finally it came up Kate Gosselin. So that whole situation was depressing.
Yeah.
They split up after all that, but I hated that show. And
it was awful.
I still watched it sometimes though. But anti-vaxxer, multi-level marketing participant, posts a bunch of crappy motivational posts on Facebook. So this is all things attributed to Karen. How did it start? Well, as Aja Romano says, lots of places it came from, but the most prominent one was on Reddit, which is not a surprise at all.
Right.
So here's how it started. This guy had I actually don't know what it's called, a thread or whatever about talking trash about his ex-wife. And so he'd say all these bad things about his ex-wife. Her name was Karen. This Redditor,
Mm-hmm.
who's only a 17-year-old high school student, created a subreddit called r/bleepuKaren, devoted to making memes about this guy's stories about his ex-wife.
Right.
And that thing blew up all the way to 435,000 people in this subreddit, which just memes about people that have the qualities that we talked about earlier. So as you mentioned, this is much like the OK Boomer thing. It kind of spread like wildfire. I'm going to give this one a sort of a lukewarm, like sideways, mostly down thumb. And I can't give it a full enthusiastic thumbs down just because I have laughed at, like, the manager haircut thing is pretty funny and accurate.
Yeah.
What I don't like about it is this thing where it's, okay, we talked about basic. I like basic because basic is like, it puts a finger on something that people that like mainstream stuff. Yeah. But the Karen thing, I mean, how many poor Karens are out there now that have to deal with this baggage because of a meme and a stupid Reddit subreddit? Yeah. I just think it's like a kind of funny joke that's gone way too far. And I don't like some of the things that are being said about Karen. So I'm not going to completely take up for Karen because she can be rude with the whole being mean to the waiter. But other than that, sometimes I see Karen's points. Maybe I'm a Karen.
It could be.
If you look around the room and you don't see
You like sweatpants?
I like sweatpants. I did do multi-level marketing.
Yeah, so maybe it's hitting a little too close to home for you. I'm going to give this one a thumbs down, mostly because it's just too broad.
Easy. We can't say broad anymore.
Well, that's not what I mean. I mean, and it kind of hits too many things at once. Right. I like a good insult. I like a good joke, but especially after we've come across one of the better insults you can do, bless your heart, which is a sharp, stinging,
the contrast is just
slicing put down. Karen's, it's just a lazy kind of joke that, like you said, lumps every white lady stereotype in there together. And as I think I was pretty firm when we discussed basic before. Yeah. I've been on the wrong side of that, being body shamed, and I don't like that. So I think I got to give Karen a thumbs down.
All right. We agree on that one. 2 thumbs down.
So concluding with our plague-themed episode, I wanted to kind of end on a happy note, end on a positive note. And again, not to make light of sickness and disease, but when you're in the middle of something, just got to kind of roll with it. And if you can't laugh, you'll go crazy. Yeah. So I'm going to conclude with an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
Okay. That's good. Now, Benjamin Franklin is the first thing I think of, and it probably has nothing to do with him.
Not even close.
Yeah, figured.
It's food, so it looks, I think you're kind of right with that.
Well, he probably ate himself some caramel-covered apples back in the day.
Which brings up, you just made me think of something that, you kind of think of Benjamin Franklin as like a portly fellow, right?
Right.
How'd you get fat back in 1776?
He probably weighed 105 or 135 pounds. It's like Babe Ruth. Mm-hmm. I remember my dad talking about this. Like when John Goodman played Babe Ruth, he's like, Babe Ruth wasn't that fat. And you go back and you look and it's like, he really wasn't that fat. Yeah. He got a little heavy, but same with Benjamin Franklin. Yeah. But to your point, remember the guy who couldn't sit on a horse because he was fat? That was Great Scott guy. That's impressive.
That is.
So Ben Franklin, a little tubby, but
but he did some good stuff, and he was a good friend to John Paul Jones.
But it had nothing to do with an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
Not at all. So phrase finder, going to keep this nice and simple, and they note that this actually goes back to Wales. So shout out to the Welsh, and hopefully my friend who hates the Welsh isn't listening. Yeah. Goes back to the February 1866 edition of a publication called Notes and Queries magazine. A Pembrokeshire proverb: eat an apple on going to bed, and you'll keep the doctor from earning his bread.
Wait a minute. That sounds like a rap song.
Someone was a poet and didn't know it. It sounds like a lost verse from the Super Bowl Shuffle.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah.
So this is something that
eat my apple before I go to bed, so that doctor can make his bread. Because that's how everybody rapped in 1987.
And that's how I would rap. Like if you put a gun to my head and said, drop some ill lyrics, it would come out like that. Again, apple a day keeps the doctor away. I think we've all heard it. It's not a big surprise what it means. Apples are fruit. Mm-hmm. Supposedly they're good for you. We focus a lot on things how I don't eat salad. don't eat that much fruit either. But if I guess I'm going to have to take some fruit down, it's probably going to be an apple.
Because you're pounding protein powder still, man.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm not fat.
Well, Steve, I'd like to just let you know that as it should happen, I had an apple before you came over, and it made me feel better. We talked about being hangry. Mm-hmm. I was feeling off, and I mean, I don't know if this is going to keep the doctor away, but yeah, it's one of those things where I always have apples. I make my kids eat apples. It's not my preferred go-to either. Like I'd rather have some cheese or something. Right. But then every once in a while I'm like, Scott, you should eat an apple. Mm-hmm. Eat an apple, and I'm always happy I did.
And probably one of the reasons it's been ingrained in you is an apple a day keeps.
It probably is. Those things do stick with you.
So some good things that we have from apples, and here's from healthline.com, 10 impressive health benefits of apples. A lot of vitamins. Vitamin C, pretty prominent. Also vitamins A, E, B1, B2, and B6.
You sunk my battleship.
Yeah. Oh, well played. It might be good for your heart because they have a lot of soluble fiber, which helps you lower your blood cholesterol.
Makes you fart.
And if you have the plague, that might be something too, that as your body starts to fall apart, you might lose control of your bowels. And it might help protect your brain. Apple juice is seen to have benefits for age-related mental decline, which I frankly don't believe.
I don't believe that at all.
Yeah, because apple juice is basic. If you had apple juice lately, it's like sugar upon sugar.
No, I learned that at some point. Was like, this is just straight sugar. And it's the same thing with drinking the hard apple cider. I mean, if you get a good dry one, like from a Richmond brand like Busky, that's good. Okay. Oh, I feel so hipstery right now, but it's true.
You should.
But if you have one of those like other ones, it's the worst possible like alcoholic drink you can have, like as far as sugar and stuff.
So what does this have to do with the plague? Well, apple a day helps keep the doctor away, and also another way to keep the plague away, to keep typhoid away, to keep coronavirus away. Very simple. Wash your hands. Wash your hands. And I've been impressed by the New York Times coverage of the coronavirus outbreak, and just one of the consistent things are wash your hands, keep your hands clean. One of the reasons that Typhoid Mary spread typhoid, even though she was an asymptomatic carrier, meaning she didn't have symptoms of the disease, but she carried it. She didn't wash her hands. The plague, back in the day, the proverbial back in the day, people didn't wash their hands. London was a filthy, dirty mess that used the Thames as a giant sewer. One of the ways that the plague was getting spread.
Yeah.
Also, you're not supposed to touch your face, which is a really bad thing because I touch my face pretty much.
Yeah, I saw that too. I'm the same way, but it's okay because I'm usually like stroking my beard,
right?
Which, as we mentioned before, actually no, that's bad because it's catching all the bacteria.
But I feel better because I frequently wash my hands to help control things. So want to end on a positive note. We hope that coronavirus moves itself to the annals of history very quickly.
What's your stance? So washing apples, we got to wash our apples too, right?
Yeah. Okay. Wash everything. But wash your hands. Don't be in a panic. We hope that this passes soon. Hope you've learned some history behind some interesting idioms.
I wanted to end by saying bless your heart, but I just can't do it.
I'm trying to,
I can't get it out.
So in conclusion, it's an interesting time we live in a variety of ways. Wash your hands and enjoy the history they're in, and stay safe. We hope to hear.
And if you get a chance, go ahead and shoot a bear with a blow dart. Hi, it's Scott. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And on behalf of Steve and myself, I just want to say I hope you and your loved ones are staying safe, washing those hands, distancing yourself socially, and doing all the things we're supposed to be doing right now, like staying indoors, watching Netflix, listening to podcasts. Hey, do you have a friend that might like our podcast? You should tell them about it. I'm going to read a 5-star review that we recently got, and thank you so much for your reviews. This is on Apple Podcasts, and it is from R. Dearman. The subject is The Way Podcasts Ought to Be. It says, great banter, informative, very entertaining, pithy, well-organized, and engaging. Scott and Steve are a perfect team. Keep up the good work. Thank you, R. Dearman. We will try. And we will be back next week with another show. Thank you again for listening.
Spilling over, getting the boys to go outside, getting the boys to mount to outside. Interrupt the strife.
Bless your heart, tramp.